Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the MadCap signing back in after a long reprieve. I do apologize for the long wait and absence. I know some of you were probably concerned where I've been, but I had to get some things going in order for me to get back into making more content again. Uh, I'm very happy to be back. And it's going to be a exciting week ahead as we're getting close to Zack Snyder's Justice League. First things first, I wanted to break down this review article by our dear and lovely friends of IGN. In case of you guys aren't familiar with IGN, I mean, they came from a really good background of producing, writing, publishing film reviews, video game reviews, but I think, especially in the past decade, they have gone to more Shilly territory. Uh, much more, if not as much as a Collider. But let's get right into it. So this is IGN's Zack Snyder's Justice League review. Um, Fate Justified, as its sub headline there. And we're gonna break this article down, which I already had like read this over, and this is already another example of a pretty mediocre article from IGN. So we're gonna get right started. All right, and this is gonna be spoiler heavy, but you know, with what's going to be said down here, which I already read, there's really nothing much to spoil, and there's really nothing much new to spoil here, which they really kept it to a down low, at least until everyone sees the Snyder Cut. So let's get right on to it. If you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings film franchise, odds are that after you have watched the extended editions, there was no going back to the theatrical cuts after seeing how the additional material enriches the story. That goes triple for Zack Snyder's Justice League. That goes triple. Okay, just right off the bat, there's already a false equivalency to the Lord of the Rings franchise, which was a highly ambitious visionary project from Peter Jackson. All theatrical cuts that were released in theaters were critically beloved by critics and audiences. And each film of the Lord of the Rings were all $1 billion blockbusters if you want to include ticket inflation costs. But because it's the success that Peter Jackson had gained, as well as the studios behind Lord of the Rings, Time Warner or New Line Cinema gave him the go ahead to release the extended editions, which are pretty much just expanding on a really good story that was already presented for theatrical distribution, but with the new scenes, new material, it does give some more depth. Some scenes that were left out because they had to meet studio demands to show the films in many screens as possible, and it did make watching the Lord of the Rings franchise more complete. As I recall, in Return of the King, there was like a lot of like death scenes for a lot of like villainous characters that were left out from the theatrical cut. But I can't really say the same for Zack Snyder's Justice League. Um, but in his own extended versions, like for Batman v Superman, because Batman v Superman, for example, was a horribly constructed, very rushed, put together mess when it came out theatrically, and the praise that it later got because of the extended cut was that it fleshed out more of the developmental strands, uh, some little plot beats that were left with very obvious plot holes and logic holes, and more context to scenes that went on in Batman v Superman. But as a result, it did improve it a bit, but it's not saying much because it's still the same fucking film that Zack Snyder, along with his writers Goyer and Chris Terrio, had constructed, which is still a very hollow, overwrought, joyless mess. What was released as a sloppy, lighthearted team up of quippy heroes rises like a dead Kryptonian from the Genesis chamber ready for a second chance. The fabled Snyder Cut elevates Justice League into something worth watching. Excuse me. The setup for Zack Snyder's Justice League in broad terms remains the same as the theatrical cut. After Superman sacrifices himself to kill Doomsday, Ben Affleck resolves to put together a team of heroes to defend Earth from an oncoming alien threat. But with double the runtime to spend on more establishing context around key events, how that story is told this time around far more coherent and engaging. See, this is the other thing here. This is the same thing that people said about the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition. Is that, while it does fill in little gaps in the theatrical version's sloppy presentation, it's still it's still a myriad of all the problems that Zack Snyder had from Man of Steel, and it doesn't really improve any of the issues that Man of Steel had onto its sequel. So, while the Justice League Whedon cut did provide a more funner, simpler movie, even though it's pretty generic in its execution, there's no guarantee that this film's going to be a much more longer. It's not going to be any different from Batman v Superman, which will be a pretty long, meandering, convoluted, and spectacle laden disaster. Where a theatrical race from action scene to action scene, Zack Snyder's Justice League is a methodical, slow burn. It has a much deeper interest in exploring Superman. In exploring its characters and lore than you may expect. Oh, you mean like how Batman v Superman did with its methodical, slow and burn pacing that explores characters and lore that weren't shoe-in teaser trailers for the Justice League movie? And you shove in Wonder Woman with no given explanation why she's there. And rushing in Doomsday at the very last minute to echo Death of Superman. Nearly every character in Zack Snyder's Justice League from the top down has a clear journey and more dimension. There's no one that exemplifies that better than Ray Fisher Cyborg, who saw the vast majority of his backstory cut in Justice League 2017 release. Well, that's given just to condense the film to its 2-hour limit that the studio pressed on Zack Snyder. But Zack Snyder wasn't on board because he had to deal with personal issues, including suicide of his daughter, which is very sad. It's frankly stunning how engaging Victor Stone is here compared to the robotic, bland iteration of the theatrical cut. Snyder's version of Victor plays up the gothic horror aspect of a college student who's given a second chance at life through his father's sadness and his experimentations with the mother box. And their conflicted relationship is given new dimension in several scenes together. Victor's struggle to accept his new circumstances is played with nuance by Fisher, and colors everything the character does, from his early reluctance to aid the heroes to his eventual acceptance of his responsibility to use his power for good. Now, this is already stuff that was covered in the Whedon cut, whether you like the movie or not. But I mean, as far as I remember, Victor was hiding from the world because of his new body and his new look, and that he feels like he's a freak. Until Victor's father gets kidnapped by Steppenwolf, and you have that huge sewer battle, and Cyborg pilots one of Batman's Batmobiles, like it was like that spider crawler Batmobile, and from there he becomes an ally to the Justice League. I mean, for obvious reasons, but this is like he's presenting this information right here as if this is like new stuff that the Whedon cut left out, and I'm sure, and yeah, there was a lot of backstory. I'm sure it was there, but I mean, he it had to be condensed because of studio demands. All right, like Cyborg, Batman's characterization is almost entirely different this time. This Bruce Wayne has been irrevocably changed by Superman's sacrifice, and here serves as the standard bearer for the hope that Jor-El sent his son to inspire. Like, does Batman know any of this? Does Batman know of the stuff about Jor-El? And how Jor-El inspired Superman to be the hope giver. Because not really, because Batman's issue was that he blamed Superman for the destruction of Metropolis, including one of his company towers where a lot of his employees and his peers were killed. Bruce has struggled to put the isolation that comes to define him is in the past and assumes a more leadership amongst these wildly different heroes is given gravity by how earnestly Affleck plays his reverence for the Man of Steel and the ideal he represented. This is the kind of Bruce Wayne who will turn to a skeptical Alfred, grin, grin and say, "Faith, Alfred, faith." Skeptical Alfred. What reason was Alfred need to be skeptical in this version? For all we know, in the Batman v Superman cut was Alfred saw Superman as more optimistic, and Bruce Wayne failed to listen to him. I'm assuming with the death of Superman, I mean, it is going to create a much more dour and darker world in his absence. That's a far cry from being one Martha away from running Superman through a kryptonite spear. Also, he gets an absolute banger of an F-bomb at one point. Hearing Batman say fuck is rad. Hearing Batman say fuck is rad. Now, again, this is pretty much like the fucking teenager sensibility of IGN. They'll see something that's clearly there just to get excited over. These costume characters that they grew up on are saying fuck for the first time. That's like a 14-year-old getting excited over anything. I mean, a child would be pleased by anything, but this is something else. Bruce's faith in Superman, as we know, pays off. Superman's resurrection plays far better with a more of a lead up. And once he gets over his destroy whoever I see instinct, Clark gets a moment to shine back at the Kent family farm. Wasn't this covered in the Justice League version, where we saw a more uplifting, more hopeful Superman? And Henry Cavill smiles. He never smiles throughout all of fucking Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. So here they wanted to fix the issue to create a more heroic Superman, and they did a good job with it. Like, he saves a building from being destroyed in that fucking end fight in Justice League. And you might call me a child for that, but that's exactly what Superman would do. It was trying to embrace a more cartoony comic book nature that, you know, the Marvel films were successful at. His reunion with Lois Lane and Martha Kent is much more emotional thanks to Zack Snyder's increased focus on how devastated the two were by his death. Zack Snyder's increased focus, you mean like how he focused a lot on Lois Lane, a character we didn't give a shit about in Man of Steel, and we continue to not give a shit about in Batman v Superman? And the reunion with Lois and Martha Kent, like that shot in the second trailer for this version where it looks like Henry Cavill was like done with the franchise from being disappointed time and time again. Yeah. And how devastated the two were by his death. Like, we don't understand these characters. We have no emotional gauge for these characters. However, one way in which Snyder's cut doesn't vary much from the theatrical cut in conception is that Superman's world is limited by design, but here at least he's far more prevalent as a symbol for our heroes. Snyder presents Ezra Miller's Barry Allen. Oh, poor Ezra Miller. As farther along in mastering his powers than the theatrical cut did, including an entirely different introduction scene. The boost in confidence he gains from that levels out the earlier version's manic energy. He remains a comic relief character and fills that role well. He's still a great enough hero to freak out when entering the Batcave for the first time. Snyder doubles down on Flash in the finale with spectacular use of the speed force that raises the bar for his eventual solo film. Is that even still happening? Like, Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill are both done with their movies. Like, we're not going to get a Ben Affleck Batman movie because that's already going to be taken over with, I forgot his name, not the director, but okay. Robert Pattinson's Batman is coming out. So clearly they're both out of the picture. So I'm not even sure if the eventual Flash movie is going to happen because how much money they put into Justice League for both cuts. It's insane. He remains a comic relief character and fills that role well. Oh, you mean like how he did in the Whedon cut, where he was just nothing but comic relief? He was like, I don't know what is it with Hollywood, because he comes off a bit like autistic and overly neurotic to the point where it's like fucking Big Bang Theory's levels of stereotypical comic relief. Um, Spectacular use of Speed Force. I mean, what is with the power levels in these movies? Like, considering the stakes and the abilities that these characters have, like, there's not much of a balance with these power levels. It's just like Superman and Wonder Woman have these world changing, like doom bringing power levels, except for Batman because he's obviously just a guy. All right, moving on. Like Cyborg, Arthur Curry, Jason Momoa has little interest in playing nice with the team at first. Snyder draws out Aquaman's eventual decision to join the Justice League with more explanation about why he's resisted his Atlantean heritage. The focus of restored scenes featuring Willem Dafoe's character from the 2008 film, which apparently he decides to start man bunning by the time in James Wan's Aquaman. Arthur's story feels like little more than a setup to give him a fuller arc in his own movie, but at least this time we have a clear. Arthur's story feels like little more than a little more than a setup, but at least we have a clearer picture of where Arthur's at and some of why he harbors so much resentment towards Atlantis. Yeah, because Atlantis spent most of the time hunting down his birth mother, so he doesn't want to go back to Atlantis and become king. Which, like, I think there's a brief. Well, this was confusing in the Whedon cut, and I'm sure the Snyder version will probably flesh this out a bit, where he just goes to some ancient part of Atlanta, and Atlantis. He goes to some ancient part to Atlantis where Steppenwolf is attacking Mira, and Steppenwolf makes out with one of the mother boxes secured by Atlantis, and he has that conversation with Mira of whether he's going to go back, but that prompts Arthur to join the Justice League despite resentment to Ben Affleck's offer, to Bruce Wayne's offer, excuse me. Okay. Of all the heroes, Wonder Woman ends up benefiting least from the extra runtime, as the Amazons prove to have the most information on Darkseid and his prior failure to conquer Earth. Yeah, so this is something that they withheld from Diana in the first Wonder Woman film, where they withheld information about Eris, so they withheld information about Darkseid. Or I'm sorry, no, they tell the origin of Eris. What I meant was like they withheld about Diana's true origin about herself, for her to find out on her own. Diana is often relegated to delivering historical exposition. In battle, though, Wonder Woman is deadly as hell, free from the restrictions of the PG-13 rating imposed on the theatrical cut. Snyder has no problem letting Diana's inner demagogue off the chain, like how she did in the first Wonder Woman movie, where she fights Eris and goes crazy on a bunch of German conscripts that has nothing to do with Eris, but for the war itself. Notably, in her first fight scene, where she just obliterates a room full of terrorists and cracks a couple of skulls against the walls as she goes. Jesus Christ, man. Like, this is an issue with Snyder. Like, this is what he thinks his Supermans would do to make them look cool, because he has a shallow perception of these characters. It's just like, Superman isn't cool enough unless he throws Zod across buildings. Batman isn't cool enough unless he destroys a bunch of cars with his Batmobile and murders a bunch of criminals in hand-to-hand combat, or brands people so that way they be given like the death treatment in prison. See, this is a weird thing. It's just like he just thinks this is cool, and really this is just like some edgy 14-year-old's wet dream of how he pictures these comic book characters that have existed for this long. Meanwhile, attention is paid to the near universal criticism lobbed at the theatrical cut's villain Steppenwolf, where his vague motives and uninteresting personality left his only real contribution to the movie, giving the League someone to punch in the final battle. Zack Snyder's Justice League repositions Steppenwolf as an outcast, desperate to make good on his failures and get back into Darkseid's good graces by delivering to Earth. Like Steppenwolf as an outcast. Wasn't this cover? I feel like yeah, this is like when they were just looking neck and neck with what Marvel was doing. Like, wasn't Thanos an outcast that he was desperate to make good on genociding half the universe in order for the universe to live economically well? Except he wasn't trying to get into anyone's graces, but all right, continue. With a more imposing costume and savagery on the battlefield, the R rating takes advantage of Steppenwolf starts off with actual motivations this time, and his eventual fate is so much cooler, but once Darkseid decides to start taking his calls again, Steppenwolf stalls out a bit. It doesn't help that Snyder introduces another MacGuffin that Darkseid's after, and the big bad's desire for it starts to overshadow what Steppenwolf's doing with the mother boxes back on Earth. Now, I'm not sure what Zack Snyder's planning to do because Steppenwolf and Darkseid just come off as yeah, it's just what you would expect, just generic CGI comic book villain. As Zack Snyder has a poor track record of making good villains, like Zod's just a violent and nonsensical idiot, and Eisen Luthor is just like twitchy and manic and fluffy and fun, where it's not very intimidating as Lex Luthor. It's just like stupid and just mugging of your attention. All right. The action benefits from Snyder's experience hand in that department. Clashes between heroes and villains feels more visceral this time, and each hero gets multiple moments to shine. However, while each battle does play out with more energy, it's in these scenes where some of the additional, less polished visual effects work is more noticeable. Well, yeah, okay. Well, clearly, with how much money they put in, and Snyder's decision to not do the full framework like the Whedon cut, but to do the 1:33:1 square frame aspect ratio, I mean, that was clearly done just to hide how bad the effects look, because the effects in that first teaser trailer were pretty awful. It's like Zack Snyder's regressing his visual effects direction from all of his movies. And Man of Steel has some good visual effects. It's definitely the best looking of the DCU, even though it's not saying much considering the effects work is very hit and miss. Um, but yeah, it's just like the $70 million budget did not really like make the effects improve as much. It just feels like a lot of like CGI scenes with a palette of 300, and the character models don't look well. They really don't look good. So had he released this in like that IMAX format, it would be so obvious of how bad the effects look. But because of the other aspect ratio difference, it's just like he wants to hide it as much as possible, because I guess he knows how terrible the visual effects do look, the CGI. So I mean that's definitely going to be no mistake when we get the actual movie. It's not just the action that has been revamped. Danny Elfman's score has been replaced by a much punchier one courtesy of Junkie XL, aka Thomas Hulkenberg. Snyder's also excused the widescreen format of its theatrical release in favor of the 1:33:1 square frame that seems to destined to fill IMAX screens when we're in happier times. The new framing doesn't detract from the experience from watching at home, but certainly feels more suited to the big screen. I disagree, because I watched Soul on Disney Plus, and I wish that film was something I could watch on the big screen, considering that was a movie that was made for the budget it was given, and it's Pixar, damn it. It's a $200 million Pixar movie, and it looks incredible. That I wish I would be watching it in the theater. Stuff like this just looks like it. It does feel like it should be released on HBO Max because of the quality in how the effects look, how the CGI looks, but how the cinematography looks. If it's a big enough bother, most TVs have a zoom function that you could use to make it fill the screen, but come on, don't do that. Yeah, don't zoom the TV where you could obviously see how bad in detail the the visuals look. While the majority of changes Zack Snyder Justice League makes to the theatrical cut feel vital, some of the material veers into fan service for its own sake. Oh, you mean like Batman v Superman? How it veers into fan service? How much it tries to mimic comic book panels from Dark Knight Returns and Death of Superman? How it rushes in Doomsday to kick off Death of Superman? How Wonder Woman is there to team up with Batman and Superman like we never seen before, or those teaser trailers for the Justice League characters where we have no investment in. When so much of the movie is working with only what it needs to spin its 4 hour yarn, that becomes noticeable. For instance, while Superman's black suit may be comic accurate for the revived Man of Steel, its significance is only passingly referenced, which felt like a missed opportunity to say something about Clark's ideology post resurrection. See, that's what it feels like. I feel like, and this is a decision that Warner Brothers wanted to fix. They wanted to just not have Superman wear the black suit because it just comes across as just like, yeah, here's a black suit that fans will like, but who who cares about the context or reason why he has it? It's just there just to appease the Snyder base. It's no secret that Martian Manhunter debuts here in the Justice League, and his contributions are minimal and do more to distract than to serve the story. Case in point, his entrance kind of retroactively ruins a sweet moment between two characters once you know one was a actually shape-shifting green man from space. You see, this is something that I even noticed who that general character was across Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. But according to EFAP, they mentioned that his character was supposed to be Martian Manhunter. But in Man of Steel, there was no allusion to that. He was just like, I'm assuming like it was going to be like a transformative sort of arc he would play in the Justice League. But the fact that it seems like he's already Martian Manhunter just says a lot about how poorly planned out these DC films are. Which that remains to be seen, but come on. Like Man of Steel had no implication. It did throw the Wayne logo sign in that final battle, but there was no implication that it was going to be like this big movie. They were going to set up a Superman sequel, but they wanted to bring in Batman in just to desperately compete for Marvel. Similarly, while the epilogue's newly shot nightmare scene may give us another window into days of DC's future yet to pass, it feels a little indulgent to spend time seeding out story arcs that will most likely go unfulfilled, especially as this scene is tacked on after an otherwise cogent coda, which nicely sums up the character arcs. With that said, the touted encounter between Batman and Joker, Jared Leto's Joker, while brief, doesn't disappoint. The bloody history between the two looms large over their tense exchange, which is a highlight for both actors' tenure in their roles. You see, that's another thing that is geared towards the fan service issue that they pointed out. It's just like, yeah, Batman and Joker are going to finally meet up, but is it going to mean anything? It feels like it's just going to be alluding to another movie which may never happen, which is a lot of these things that are wrong with the DC movies. Just like, especially with Batman v Superman, it's just like there's an illusion of a story there, but they just like don't commit to it. They think like a movie's going to be made in the future, regardless of what the long term appeal for these DC movies are gonna be like, because Man of Steel and Batman v Superman disappointed financially, and so they spent a lot more money on Justice League, and they lost a lot. and yet they give Snyder more money to finish his uh, director's version. Final verdict: Zack Snyder's Justice League is a surprise vindication for the director and the fans that believed in his vision with a mature approach to its superhero drama, better realized antagonists, and improved action. Snyder's version of Justice League saves the movie from the dustbin of history, something that likely only could have happened on a streaming platform like HBO Max. Though not every addition feels totally necessary and some new effects stick out as unpolished, it's hard to overstate how much more enjoyable this version of Justice League is. 8 out of 10. Great. Excuse me. Ugh. The theatrical cut is dead. Long live the Snyder cut. And that's about just sums up this. Here, I'm going to show you something. This just sums up IGN's state of mind when it comes to these DC movies. It's like they give a lot of like positive reviews when I was looking through this side page on these DCEU movies. Like they ranked this as high as Wonder Woman 84, which is it's a terribly constructed sequel, but it's got like a following. And I'm sure if I watch this with somebody with like drinks and laughs, yeah, this movie's gonna have like the kind of like campy superhero cult following like Batman and Robin or Catwoman. So let's look at this here. Let's look at the brief consensus. A nostalgic look back to a beloved time that provides escapism from an exceptionally difficult year, which is this is like a broad generalization. It's just like, isn't any movie off the year 2020 supposed to do that? The adherence to a more classic superhero template means it is lacking in any genuine surprise or outstanding innovation, but this approach is always filtered through Jenkins' contemporary lens. Birds of Prey delivers in spades. Its zany energy, visceral fight sequences, and focus on one of DC's most fascinating characters ensures that it continues Warner Brothers. It continues Warner Brothers' winning streak of big bombastic comic book adaptations. Oh yeah, Warner Bros. Is really having a good streak indeed. Remember Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, those highly successful movies that didn't do well with critics and audiences. Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman. Even with the Rotten Tomatoes fresh rating, like Wonder Woman's a terrible movie. And yeah, I think people have rode off the Harley Quinn wagon when Suicide Squad kind of died down over time. Next, Joker isn't just an Joker isn't just an awesome comic book movie. It's an awesome movie, period. Yeah, Joker's a 10 out of 10 out of against movies like The Dark Knight, which is a movie that does have problems, but that's 10 out of 10 in comparison. Or Batman Begins. We're talking like in broad film sense, like is it as good as like fucking Parasite, Gone Girl, Her, and that's pretty much just IGN. They'll just like give these positive reviews to these DC films because it's the DC brand, much like every other film. So let's move along forward because I'm gonna have to close this review. I have to close this video soon. Shazam, Justice League, Wonder Woman. Oh, let me look at Wonder Woman real fast. Wonder Woman is leaps and bounds above the three entries in the DCEU, with a dramatic setting, few entertaining action scenes, and strong supporting cast all working together to tell an inspirational hero's journey. It more than offsets some occasionally uneven acting on Gadot's part. Yeah, it offsets some occasional. Well, to Chris Pine's credit, he was the best part of the movie, and some shaky technical aspects. The messy third act fight, however, is something that has plagued other superhero films and is something even Wonder Woman cannot overcome. Wonder Woman is a win because it successfully tells the story of a woman taking on a war-torn world with the power of love. Yeah, love is the key to the universe. Yeah, we're gonna fight Eris with love. I'm gonna shoot a lightning bolt at his chest and obliterate him, while I murder all these German conscripts. Yeah, great message. And I'm gonna blame characters who were truthful about the war issue. It was, yeah, I'm gonna blame issues on the war issue on characters who have been truthful, like Steve Trevor. 5.9. It goes, well, we know Suicide Squad sucks. Batman v Superman is not much fun. And they give Man of Steel a 9 out of 10, and that was a sign where I was very much losing faith in these guys. But all right, I guess that's pretty much it. So this is MadCap signing off. I hope you guys enjoyed this article breakdown. Like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me what you guys think of IGN, although there really isn't much to think about for these people. So I might as well just like reiterate Leia's quote in The Last Jedi: "Only dead heroes, no leaders." IGN is nothing but dead stories, dead articles, no critics, no journalists. Thank you all for watching, and I'm sure we're all going to look forward to the Snyder Cut, which should be debuting this Thursday on HBO Max. I myself, and please rewind. We're going to watch this movie, and we're going to talk about it in a couple streams. But thanks again for watching. This is MadCap signing off, and take care and have a good night.